Good morning, everybody. My name's Adam Fuller. I am Development Manager at the Archers School Sport Partnership based out of Forge Valley School in Sheffield. And I am sort of chairing this meeting and this webinar this morning on behalf of the Move More Schools group. With a big focus around Move More this year in Sheffield to get schools and pupils and children active and get them outdoors. So really pleased that this morning we can introduce Martin Clist, who is an outdoor education advisor from Sheffield City Council, to do a webinar for us that will hopefully help you guys as schools get outside, especially at the moment with everything that's going on in school. And we will be looking at sharing this with all schools across the city as well. So over to you, Martin, to introduce yourself and yeah, tell us lots of interesting stuff and easy ways we can get out and get active.
Great stuff. Hello everyone, I'm Martin Clist. Thanks for that, Adam. I am the Outdoor Education Advisor for Sheffield City Council, and I'm also the outdoor education, I'm also an outdoor education instructor at Thornbridge Outdoors as well too, which is Sheffield's outdoor education centre. So I've got a fair bit of experience in the outdoors. I've got a bit of experience of working with lots of different groups. So I've worked with primary school students, I've worked with secondary school students, I've worked with university students, master's students, running team building activities, problem solving challenges. In the past as well, I've also done quite a bit of work with pupil referral units and inclusion units and youth offenders, and also some work with SEND, students with physical disabilities, learning disabilities. So I've got a fair background in the outdoor education industry. If you have any questions at all at any point, please just ask. Adam's keeping an eye on the chat room and he'll just tell me if anyone has any questions, and then hopefully I'll be able to answer those to your satisfaction. Yeah, we'll get cracking. So I wanted to have a quick start with what the benefits of being outdoors and moving are. I don't want to spend too long on this because I'd like to think that it's actually just pretty well known. I'd like us to think that we all understand that being outdoors is really good for us. And I'd like to think that we all know that moving physically is good for us as well. And that's probably partly why you're all here and watching this today. Just to go through a few things though, the benefits of being outdoors are very well documented and understood. Being physical and moving our bodies is incredibly good for young people, not only young people, people my age, older people as well too. It's good for their physical health and it's very good for their mental health as well too. In terms of being outdoors and doing outdoor education, being outdoors is also incredibly good for contextualizing curriculum learning. So if you have something that you want to teach the children, actually going outside and doing it helps to contextualize it as well too. A quick example of that would be at Thornbridge Outdoors. We sometimes take students to a local mine that we have called Ashford Black Marble Mine. And I know that then some of those teachers go back to the school and use that experience as a starting off point for writing stories about being a miner. And obviously it's much easier to do that sort of creative writing if you have an experience of actually being underground, being in a mine, seeing what it's like. This is an actual Ofsted quote. Being outdoors and doing outdoor education makes learning more memorable and fun. And all of these things exist all of the time, whether or not we're in the middle of a global pandemic. So today the focus is going to be on stuff slightly surrounding COVID, but also things that we can then take and do after all of this time is over, hopefully around Easter when the vaccine gets rolled out. All of these things that we'll be doing because we can't go particularly far, hopefully those will now be embedded in our schools and we can keep doing them afterwards as well. Just to make a point about COVID, all of the science points to the fact that being outdoors reduces transmission of the virus. So it's actually safer than being indoors. If you can get your kids outside as much as possible, you will reduce the transmission of the virus. And that's backed up by all the scientific data that we have. So being outside, even if that's just in your playground, is safer than being in your classroom and will reduce the transmission of the virus.
Martin, so, just on the slides have stopped sharing. I don't know if that's if you've done that on purpose or
no, I definitely haven't. I've lost the bar on the top. I've obviously pressed something that I shouldn't have done. Okay, do you know, Adam, how I get the bar back on the top? What have I done here?
Not sure. Is it on full screen?
No. How do I get it onto full screen? Do I do that?
You should be able to see.
I've got full screen now.
Out at the bottom that says share screen.
Yeah.
I'll stop sharing screen and then restart with slides maybe.
Is that better? Are we back on again now?
We're on.
Fantastic. Thanks very much for telling me, Adam. Cheers for that. Right, from current slide. That better? Great stuff. Just let me toggle backwards and forwards as well too. Is that working now? Great stuff. Thanks very much, mate. So just to quickly say, there are obviously limits at the moment on what we can do that are defined by the government. So at the moment, we can't travel particularly far. We shouldn't really be taking public transport. It's difficult for us to take minibuses sometimes. We can put things into place to make those things happen. I don't want to say that you can't do them, but obviously at the moment, it's probably better and easier if we stay local. And actually that really fits in with the Move More ethos anyway, which is this idea that we should be doing stuff locally, quickly, moving more, trying not to take too much buses to get to places. And so what I want us to concentrate on is what we can do. So even with all the government guidance in place, we can still stay local. And what I want us to think about is staying local as even being in our school grounds. So let's not even think about outdoor education being something that we have to go a long distance to do, or that we have to travel to do at all. We don't even have to leave our site to do outdoor education. We can actually stay in our playground. You might have lots of things on your site that you can use. And in some senses, I don't even really want us to think about outdoor education as being outdoor education. I just want us to think about these things as being lessons in a different classroom. I think sometimes when people talk about outdoor education, the fact that we talk about it as being a different thing makes us a little bit worried about it and makes us think that we have to do things differently. When I work at Thornbridge Outdoors, I'm an educator. All of my lessons are outside. I just happen to use the outside as my classroom. So if we can stay local, even in your playground, even just doing a lesson outside, that's brilliant. If you're doing reading, just take your chairs outside and just do it outside if it's a lovely day. If there's something that you can tie into that you can just go outside and look at in your playground, just do it. Leave the classroom, get outside, walk around a bit. That physical movement helps re-engage the students. If you want to go somewhere, that's amazing. Find out something to do in your local area in walking distance. My daughter's school, their park is literally outside the school gate. They don't even have to cross a road to get to it. And that's some beautiful green areas. It's got trees in it, lots of things that you can use to do some sort of environmental education. Walking distance, they walk to Healy Pool. There's a canal nearby to talk about industry, lots of really interesting stuff to see in the local area. So if you can do a trip that's in walking distance, brilliant, do that. You might find that there's a great place nearby to teach the students things that you'd normally have to get in a minibus and go to. And actually then, because that's more local, once all of this is over, you'll be able to run that trip more easily anyway. So all of these things that I've said fits in with the Move More ethos, luckily, or maybe not luckily. So I think after talking to teachers for the last few years, there are some barriers that we can overcome to make sure that we can get outside more and do more education outdoors, get the kids moving. So I've identified through talking to teachers, there's 4 areas in which we can do things to help people get over the barriers that they think are in place. And these areas are a lack of confidence from the staff to run these activities, a perception that these activities are risky, or that there has to be a lot of paperwork involved. People might feel that their students aren't properly equipped to do these sort of things. You might have come to Thornbridge and we've given you loads of stuff to get outdoors in, and you think to yourself, oh man, we don't have all of those things. And for some people, they don't feel that getting outside is part of the school culture. They somehow think that it's a bit unusual or weird. And if they do it, they feel like they might be looked sort of, I don't know, viewed a bit negatively for trying to do that. And these are all areas that I'd like to spend a bit of time looking at to show us how we can break down these barriers before we move on to looking at some resources that you might have in your schools to help you get outside more. Does anyone have any questions so far at all, Adam?
Nothing yet, unless Nicola.
No.
No worries. That's fine. Just shout out, take yourselves off mute and shout out if you'd like to. So how do we go about breaking these barriers down? So the first one, a lack of confidence. I speak to teachers these days and they seem to be really worried about getting outside. They seem to somehow feel that it's a dangerous thing to do or that they might not be able to do it. And so the first thing I'd like to say is start small and stay local. Just like I was pointing out earlier, I'd like us to think about this as being education in a different setting. So that means just go outside your classroom, stay in the playground. You don't even have to leave your school grounds. And if that's the first time you do it, it's just literally, hey, let's go outside and sit under a tree in the playground and read a book together as a group. Well, then you've just made the first move to starting to go outside a little bit more. And I would suggest that that's no more dangerous than being in your classroom. Your kids play in the playground all the time. You've already risk assessed everything in your grounds anyway, and you're just taking the kids outside because it's a nice day to go and do something else and awaken their minds a little bit. You could even watch someone else run a session. You could come to Thornbridge, see how we do it, or we could come to you once this is all over and we could run a session on your school grounds. And you could see how we do it. And hopefully that might give you the confidence to do it yourselves. If you wanted me to, as the outdoor education advisor, I'd be more than happy to come to your schools and do a sample lesson with you that involves you walking off site to help give your teachers a little bit more confidence to do that. And then you might start doing that more within your schools itself. Something that I did a little while ago that's a little bit bigger, but gives an idea of what we can potentially do, is I had a school that wanted to take a walk up Mam Tor on their residential. They didn't feel like they had the experience or the confidence to do that. And so I went out on a day that they had as an inset day. I met the staff that were going on the residential and we all did the walk up Mam Tor together. And we talked about the different issues that they might face, the route that they were going to go on, the sort of things that the students might take. And by the end of that walk, the teachers then felt absolutely fine to do it themselves. To be honest with you, they already could do it. They just needed someone like me to come in and give them that little nudge towards making them feel like they were able to do it by themselves. And that's great. They then went out and did the walk by themselves, and it all went absolutely brilliantly. So if you need me to come in, that's awesome. I'd suggest that you probably don't, and you could all do these things already anyway. The last thing I'd say is try and keep a bit of perspective. The things we're talking about here are not high risk. You are literally just taking a group of students that you already work with and you already know, and just going slightly outside the classroom with them, whether that's into the playground, to the local park. You're just changing the scenery a little bit. For most of these trips, the biggest risk will actually be the students themselves. But your teachers know the students, they work with them every single day. So actually, the biggest risk is one thing that you know and you understand really well anyway. That feeds into the next point, which is that there is a perceived risk that the things that we do are really dangerous, and they're genuinely not. So I'd like to just point out that it's difficult to overestimate how safe school trips are and how deeply uninterested the health and safety executive are in us. And I often hear this used as an excuse or a reason to not go on trips. They're dangerous. We might do something wrong and the health and safety bogeyman will come and get us. Health and safety are interested in genuine risk. If you know Forge Masters, which is a steelworks in Sheffield, they had 40 health and safety inspectors crawl over their site for a whole week. I have never heard of a health and safety team visiting a school in Sheffield, ever. This is a very, very safe environment, and the things that we do are very low risk. We're not working on scaffolding, and we are not working in a steelworks. So much of the risk is perceived rather than real. And if you need me to come in and help talk that through with you, I definitely can. Because there are these perceived risks, we think that we have to fill out a huge amount of paperwork. And I understand that at this point, I may be talking to people in schools who already get this. You may be sitting there thinking, yes, but my school wants me to fill out a lot of paperwork. And I completely get that. That's part of your school culture. And you have to do what your school tells you to do. However, what I'm saying is that the more people I tell that you don't have to fill out that much paperwork, hopefully we'll start to get a general cultural idea that we don't have to do as much as we think. So we can reduce paperwork a number of ways. At the moment, you might be worried about leaving the site because you have to fill out a COVID risk assessment every time. What I'm saying is have a standard school policy that covers visits. So you don't have to fill it out every time. You just might have a checklist before you go out that tells you all the things that you have to remember. And if these are very short trips, it might be the things that you do already, which is wash your hands before you leave, wash your hands when you get back, take some hand sanitizer with you. All of the evidence points to the fact that the virus does not last well on surfaces, outdoors, and in UV light, which is always outside. So actually, you're safer outdoors than you are in the building anyway. I'm here to tell you today as well that you don't have to fill out a risk assessment whenever you leave the building. Just as you don't have to fill out a risk assessment every time you do a lesson, you don't have to fill out a risk assessment every time you leave. Because let's remember, these things are just lessons. They're just in a slightly different environment. And so what you could do is you could just have a lesson plan like you would do for all of your lessons. And if your lesson plan involves you going outside, which I think it should, you might just have an additional box at the bottom of things to remember. And it might say something like, remember to take your meds with you, remember to take your inhalers, remember to do a head count before you leave and when you get back. And that might be all of the additional information that you need on your lesson plan that covers the risk assessment side of it. And then that lesson plan becomes a useful document for you to take out. So, especially activities that are on site, these are just lessons. You don't need to do any additional risk assessment for them. It's just a lesson that's on your site. So just as I'm sure you don't have a risk assessment for every single lesson that you do, because all of that has been done already as part of your school policies, you don't necessarily need a risk assessment every time you leave the building. One thing that I'm going to go into in just a second is operational procedures. And here they are. So this is an example of an operational procedure. And this is on Evolve. And given that this is going out to Sheffield schools, this is on the Sheffield Evolve website. So I'm just going to take you to that now. This is Evolve. You should all have a login for the site. If you don't, you can ask the Educational Visits Coordinator in your school. Can you see this okay, Adam? Just stick up your thumb if you can. Brilliant. So I'm just going to log in and I'm going to show you where to find these operational procedures. They're under Resources. The first tab, which is Guidance, Policies and Documents. Just going to have to move the videos again. Useful Forms. And then we have the generic operating procedure here and the operating procedure example. And I'll just show you the example. So this is an example that I've uploaded onto Evolve. So you would want to change it, but it just gives you an idea of how an operational procedure works. So this is something that
Martin.
Sorry?
It's not, that document's not opened on screen.
Oh, okay. I might have to share it again, mightn't I?
Yeah.
Because I've opened a new document. Is it there now?
Yeah.
Thanks for telling me, mate. So this is an example of a very simple library visit. As you can see, it says at the top, it contains useful information from generic risk assessments 1 and 2 in a different format. So it is a risk assessment. If anyone says, where's your risk assessment? It's just this. It's an operational procedure. But it's in a format that's far easier to use. The problem with risk assessments is people write them and then they go, oh, I've done that now. I can just leave it at school and never look at it ever again. The point of this is it takes the risk assessment information, puts it into a useful format, and then what all of your staff can do before they run this trip is just grab this document. You might have some of them laminated in the office, and then you can just take it with you. And it means you get outside more, because suddenly you don't have to fill out a risk assessment every time you leave. You've done it already. And it's an operational procedure, and it's a useful document that you might actually look at instead of a risk assessment that nobody ever looks at. I'm realistic about these things. I know what happens. It tells people why they do it. That's the benefit. It tells you who can run it. So this might be any member of staff with previous experience who's attended visit leader training, and that might be something that you run at your school about how you want your visits to be done. Might be any member of staff who's not been before, should be accompanied by an experienced member of staff for their first visit. So this is all useful information on here. A recommended working ratio, 1 to 30 plus a TA perhaps. It's got something about what the specific hazards are. This might be in the form of a map. It doesn't have to be written down. You might give someone a map that has on it, hey, watch out at this point because you've got to cross a really busy road, just as an example. So on here, we say things like, be careful crossing the main road outside the library, one member of staff at the head of the group, one at the rear. What's the weather? Do you need sun hats or raincoats? Just useful information that someone could need and would want to read. And then at the bottom, it says, ensure these things are in place. And you could even turn this into a tick list that then gets wiped clean afterwards. So do you need to remember any inhalers or EpiPens? Take the lesson plan. Remember to give them a briefing. And this is hopefully useful information that people will then actually read rather than a risk assessment that they won't. All of this is on Evolve for you to look at, tinker with. If you're unsure about using these, please drop me an email. I can come into school. I can take you through it. Have you ever seen these before? No? Yes?
No.
No. No worries, Nicola. Do you think it might be something that's useful in the future?
Yeah.
Cool. Let me know if you need any more help setting one up. So we'll go back to the PowerPoint. So that's what operational procedures are. This is the Outdoor Education Advisors Panel. I'm a member of the Outdoor Education Advisors Panel, and they've released some absolutely brilliant information about getting people outside. I've put a link here, but actually it's also on Evolve. Can you see Evolve again, Adam? Great stuff. And it's just here at the start, which is the OEAP Get Outside. You see that Get Outside document now, Nicola? Great.
Yeah.
And so this is a document that you can access through Evolve, or you can go straight to the OEAP's website. It's not very long, and it's really useful because it gives you some great information on all the things that I'm talking about at the moment, helping you to overcome the challenges, how learning outside can help, the things that you have to do in terms of risk management. And it also gives you some really useful information about COVID. It even shows you how to set up some kind of washing line outside with things like hand sanitizer on it and a washing hand station. So if you are that worried and that's in your risk assessments, you can set up all of this stuff outside. And I think this is a great document. It's got some really good links to other people who are doing some good practice as well too. And I really encourage you to read this. It goes into a little bit more detail than I can here. And it's a great supporting document to help you get outside at this time, but like we're saying, afterwards as well. So that's the OEAP's Get Outside document. So another one of the barriers that you might have is students not being properly equipped, or you might feel that they're not properly equipped. So one thing that you can do, and if there was anything that I tell you to buy, and I'm not saying that you should necessarily, it's just if you've got a bit of money, you could get some school wellies. And they really don't cost that much. They're £6 a pair if you look around. I put and waterproofs and fleeces afterwards, but honestly, you don't even necessarily have to worry about that. The wellies is almost the big one, because I know that certainly in schools that come from slightly more deprived socioeconomic areas, excuse me, the students may only have one pair of shoes and the parents don't like it if you get them wet. And I completely understand that. Way to get over that is to either go to places that won't be too muddy. And let's remember, the kids play outside anyway. So everything we're saying about staying on your site, what your kids come to school in, they should be able to play in outside on your school site in the playground as a bare minimum. So if you stay on the school site, they don't need anything extra. And if they're running around a lot, they don't even need warm clothes. They're generating their own heat. If you want to get something so that you can enable a trip to a local park or a local woods, which are great learning places, get some wellies. So a lot of this comes from the teachers. We worry that the kids are going to get cold and wet because actually we're the ones getting cold and wet. And sometimes that's unpleasant. And I get it. I work outside myself. I work outside all the time. And I watch the kids having a great time climbing, abseiling, riding their bikes. And I'm watching the session as an overview, and I'm the one getting cold. But we can fix that pretty quickly. We just bring warmer clothes. And you know what? An umbrella is an absolutely massive difference to getting you outside. If it's a cold, wet day, take an umbrella outside with you, and then you're able to run these sessions more effectively. We think we're worrying about the kids being cold and wet. Often it's us who are feeling a little bit cold and wet. You could do things towards the end of the day as well, and then you're sending them home afterwards anyway. You don't have to worry about them sitting inside feeling like that, because actually it's time for them to go home. Helps perk them up at the end of the day too. So hopefully that's a few ideas around you don't need much to enable this stuff to happen. So the last one is that feeling that it's not part of the school culture. And as we've talked about already, that might feel it's because you have schools that are very safety conscious, very risk averse. If you need me to come in and chat to people, that's absolutely fine. I'm willing to bet in the vast majority of cases, if your teachers go to SLT and say, I'd like to start taking my kids outside a bit more, just in the playground or to the park, I'm willing to bet most SLT will actually go, oh, that sounds like a great idea. Yeah, go for it. And it's just because we're not asking and we're not doing it that it's not happening. So as the last point I made in the last slide, kids play outside anyway. We should be able to take them out in what they bring to school. We'll soon get used to it. So it's not about the kids getting used to this. A lot of kids play outside anyway. My daughter, you can't get her out of the park at the end of the school day, but it's us who have to change our mindsets to enable this to happen. A lot of the time I'd start asking questions. I know of at least one school in Sheffield that has a little bit of woodland on their school site. They're really lucky. They don't even have to leave the school site to access some really nice woodland. And there's actually a hut in that woodland for outdoor learning. Now, you would have thought with this amazing resource, they'd be in it all the time, but they have a policy of only allowing teachers and TAs with first aid qualifications to take students to that learning site. That to me is a little bit over the top, because actually you're still on the school site. You haven't gone anywhere dangerous. You are just as close to the school office with a first aider in it as if you're just on the playground. So that seems to me to be a little bit risk averse, and actually it's stopping good things happening. And I would question why. Why do we need to have a first aider to go and do those things? And if you come and talk to someone like me, I might be able to chat through the issues with you, what your worries are, and maybe we can start talking about how to enable those things happening. And that in turn will allow us to break down all of these barriers to not getting outside. Hopefully, we can get outside more, we can move more. So to reinforce that point a little bit, who said this? Health and safety law is often used as an excuse to stop children taking part in exciting activities. But well-managed risk is good for them. They won't understand about risk if they're wrapped in cotton wool. Risk itself won't damage children, but ill-managed and overprotective actions could. Believe it or not, that's actually said by the Health and Safety Executive. That is the Health and Safety Executive position on risk in schools and with young children. The Health and Safety Executive for a little while had this up on their site as well too. It was the myth of the month. And this one was about that idea of conkers in the playground. Children cannot play conkers in the playground because it's too risky. As the health and safety executive pointed out, this is a myth. A well-meaning head teacher decided they should wear safety goggles to play conkers. What the health safety executives say about that is that realistically, the risk from playing conkers is incredibly low and just not worth bothering about. If kids deliberately hit each other over the head with conkers, that's a discipline issue, not a health and safety issue. And every single professional that I've talked to, and I have health and safety qualifications myself, is that they're actually very, very common sense about this. I've never met a single person who works in health and safety who's actually over the top about it. Funnily enough, as an addition to this story, the head teacher involved was actually making a point about health and safety that didn't exist. The head teacher was saying, look at this, it's health and safety gone mad. I have to wear these things for my children to play it. It's completely rubbish. It never happened. So, hopefully, we've put some of these barriers to bed, if I could mix my metaphors for a minute. We've taken these ideas, we've looked at the things that are stopping us get outside, and I've told you about ways to overcome these. So, what are some resources that we could have of things to do to get us outside a little bit more? I'm going to look at a few things, and some of these things are actually things that you may not know about that you actually have in your school already. And the first thing I wanted to talk to you about is the OEAP, the Outdoor Education Advisors Panel Outdoor Learning Cards. Every single school in Sheffield was given a set of these. It was quite a while ago. We're talking 5 years maybe, when every single school in Sheffield was bought a set of these and given them. They might be down the back of a radiator somewhere now. They might be stuck in a filing cabinet because the person who got given them didn't know what to do with them and filed them away. Or you might have used them quite a lot, but then the person who was responsible for delivering them left and moved on. But every school does have a pack of these somewhere if you're in Sheffield. They are 50 cards on 4 themes: bouldering, journeying, problem solving, and orienteering. The bouldering one is mainly useful for schools that have a bouldering wall, which might be, and this will be a set of holds on your school wall somewhere outside. So it's a little bit like a climbing wall, but it doesn't go very high. I know my daughter's school over the way has one. It's just a couple of panels on an outside wall with some climbing holds on it. That's not useful for every school. I get that completely. Journeying kind of starts talking about campcraft and cooking outdoors and generally being outside in that sort of slightly Duke of Edinburgh type way is the nearest thing I can think about it. They are aimed at primary school students, so the activities that they talk about are definitely suitable for the sort of students that we work with. You might not have all the equipment for all of these. Problem solving, you definitely will, because it's fairly simple stuff that involves most PE equipment. And orienteering, we're going to come back to in a minute. So if you can find these instantly, you can look at them and you can start using them. If you've lost them or if you want extra packs, contact us, because if we can get a group of people together who want them, we can buy them at a slight discount. This is what they look like. This is a sample, and this is an orienteering one. And the idea is that any teacher should be able to pick up one of these cards, read it for like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and be able to run the session. At the moment, maybe with some slight modifications due to COVID, which I completely get, I would imagine that by now we're probably not overly concerned about children using the same things, or we have things in place to manage that. Again, the same with social distancing. We're either like, well, actually, they're all in the classroom together and we're just keeping them in that bubble, or we have other ways to manage that. So I completely accept that at the moment, you might have to make slight modifications to how you run these things. Hopefully, it won't be too onerous. And again, it's not just about this time, it's about Easter, when we're a bit more back to normal. Hopefully we can start using these cards that we found to do more things on our site. As you can see, it's got a bit of a thing there about what the activity is, the review and the evaluation. If you flip the card over, it's also got a bit on the back about some things like hazards that you might need to look out for. I believe it's got some stuff on there about differentiation as well, so you can differ the activity between groups of students as well. So these are incredibly useful. I'd encourage you to try and find where they are. If you look at them and you're like, oh my God, this is a bit too much, phone me, or go to the OEAP site that you saw earlier, which is oeapng.info. And there's a search box on there. And if you type in outdoor learning cards, they've got a bit of bump about how to use them. We also run training sessions on it. We could get one member of staff from each school to come to Thornbridge when all of this has calmed down a bit, and we can teach you how to use those cards, or we can come to your schools and do it as well. Like I'm saying, the reason I'm showing you this is because you may have a pack of cards in your school already, and they are very focused on things that you can do on your site. You don't even have to leave your site to do these activities. Next, more resources that you might not know about that you already have. At some point in the past, again, I'm talking about maybe 5 years ago, every school in Sheffield was mapped for orienteering. A member of the British Orienteering Federation came to every school in Sheffield and made a really full-on orienteering map of the school, which they're really good. They're absolutely amazing resources. Your map might be on a shared drive somewhere. So if you search your school shared drive for orienteering map, you might be able to find the orienteering map that was made for your school. Even if you can't find the map, you could make your own maps as part of the fun. So actually your first lesson for orienteering could be getting the kids to draw a map of your school site. And you could literally walk around the school site with the group, looking at where everything is, going back to your classroom, and then trying to get them to draw that map as if they were looking down on it. And that's a really fun, engaging, creative, interesting activity. And then you could use those maps to do things. Now, the Orienteering Foundation, British Orienteering Foundation, has an absolutely amazing site. It has lots of really good resources on it. And I'm just going to take you to that now. Can you see that now? Thumbs up? Yeah. This is the British Orienteering Federation site. In the top corner, we've got training and support. Under that, you've got home resources. You can click on that, and it takes you to those resources. And there are so many resources. Things for autumn at the start here, match the autumn colours, tree orienteering markers, numbered markers, create your own map. There's some videos on how to run it. And as we go down, there are so many resources on here for orienteering. Like I was saying, you can even, it says here, learn more about how to map your home. Amazing. And you could do these, some of them, with your own maps. Orienteering isn't just about maps, it's also a physical activity that involves running to points. And a lot of these resources are actually about the slightly more PE interacting side of things, which is about doing shuttle runs back to points. So these are very simple activities that you can set up in your school grounds.
I just dip in on orienteering, Martin.
Yeah, go for it.
So British Orienteering have got a programme on and series of activities cards called Try-O, which is Try Orienteering, and there's some really good games that you can do even in your sports hall as well at school. And also we have a real good link with South Yorkshire Orienteers, the Orienteering Club, who have worked in Sheffield with a number of schools to remap their school with new school buildings and things that have been in place. but also put up fixed permanent markers around school to help staff
Oh, wow.
who don't have the time to go and put the controls out and things like that. So if that's an offer that your school would be interested in terms of getting some fixed control points put up in school, then contact South Yorkshire Orienteers as well, or contact your school sport partnership, and they'll be able to put you in contact as well with Pauline.
Thanks for that, Adam. Orienteering is an absolutely brilliant activity that ticks a huge amount of boxes for education. And as we're saying, as Adam just pointed out, you could even do it in your sports hall, or just get outside your classroom, do it within your local grounds, and it will make the kids look at the school site in a whole different way again, actually. It's absolutely brilliant. So that's outdoor learning cards that you might have stuffed down the sofa somewhere. That's the orienteering that you might have a map of already, or like Adam said, actually, you can actually even get in South Yorkshire to remap your school as well if you've lost that hard copy of it. Or you can make up your own local trip. And as an example of this, there was a school in Sheffield that created their own local learning wall. There we go, with links to history. What they did was they found pictures of their area that had been bombed during the war. They mapped the local area to see where the bombs had fallen. And then they took a walk around the area to see what was there now. And they compared it to photos of how the area looked when it had been bombed. So they didn't have to go far for this. It was just in their local area, but it obviously had really clear links to the history curriculum. They didn't have to even drive to visit a museum. They didn't have to take a minibus anywhere. They just stayed in their local area. Also, there are many, oh my God, so many resources out there for simple problem solving and woodland activities that could be run anywhere. And this would just even be walking into your local park, doing a leaf walk where you pick up different leaves off different trees, match them to something that you might have created already, like a simple resource of leaf shapes, and then taking the leaves back to your school for an art session, drawing the leaves, using those leaves in a picture. Kids love doing stuff like that. It's really simple. And honestly, the other day I went online for literally 30 seconds and found so many free resources about this sort of thing. And it's for stuff that's really close to your school. An example of just two things I found, and literally just looking for 30 seconds. One was Muddy Faces, which is a site that will try and sell you stuff, but you don't have to buy it. And they've got loads of free resources on there about things that are really fun and interesting to do in park or woodland areas. Another site that I really wanted to point you to was the National Trust. And they had this big thing recently, which was 50 things to do before you're 11. They're really trying to push this engagement with young children. They cottoned on to the fact that kids don't necessarily get outside as much as we'd like anymore, especially if those students live in urban areas. And they created this thing, which is 50 things to do. And I think it's absolutely brilliant. And I'm just going to try and put it up now. You can go to the National Trust website. It's really easy to find. And I'll just scroll down. You can download it here. And obviously I'll have to bring that up in a new screen now. Can you all see this okay? Good. And this is 50 things to do before you're 11. And they're really simple things that you can either do on your site or just get slightly outdoors, and you could do one a week if you wanted to. You could even just do it as part of your lesson. So if the kids seem like they're getting a bit twitchy, you could literally just go, if you're lucky enough to have trees on your site, number one, walk outside, get to know a tree. Brilliant. Just go and look at that tree more closely. How does it look from close up? How does it look from far away? What are the things that fall off it? Is there anything running up and down the tree? What's the texture of it? You could do a rubbing of it. There are so many different things that you could do just with that number one. Number 7, fly a kite. You could build a kite as part of your lesson, take it outside into the school grounds. You don't even have to go anywhere, and fly the kite in the school grounds. Wear a wild crown. Number 16. I've literally not seen some of these before. You could just go into your local woods if it's within walking distance, get enough twigs and leaves to make a crown, take it back to school and make it in your classroom with some PVC glue. And all of these are really simple ideas that could be easily incorporated into lesson plans that involve a tiny bit of a journey either into the school grounds or to your local woods or park. So that's those. There we go, 4 minutes before 11. Does anyone have any questions? You can either ask them now, or if there's anything that spurred your interest, but you just want to talk about it a little bit more, or you feel that you or your staff could do with a little bit of extra training in some of these things, just get in touch. That's me, I'm Martin Clist. Probably the easiest way to do it at the moment is contact me through the Evolve website. So you just get on and you send a message to the LA, and that's me. Or you can phone me on 07891 541194. You're probably best off leaving a message, voicemail, because I don't always have my phone on me. Sometimes I'm working out at Thornbridge with groups, chopping down trees, doing maintenance. So I don't always have the phone, or I can't always access it. So if you do phone me, you're best off leaving a message, and then I've got a record of it and I'll get back to you. Or you can send me an email, martin.clist@sheffield.gov.uk. So just to sum up, we've identified that there's some reasons that people don't like leaving the classroom. We've hopefully looked at those, given you some tactics or tips to break down those barriers. And we've looked at some simple resources that you may already have, you've forgotten about, you've lost, or you can get again through things like the British Orienteering website or the National Trust to do really simple, low risk, very, very close trips that may even be on your school site and you can just do as part of a lesson. And so therefore really don't need much more in the way of risk assessment or planning. I hope that's given you some ideas. I hope you feel more confident to get outside the classroom now. And please, I'd love to hear about the things that you're doing. If you've taken this and you've got some ideas and you do those things, I'd love to hear about it, because then I can use those to show other schools that it can be done. So just drop me a line and tell me what you've been up to. It'd be amazing to hear about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Martin.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, just
very much.
Just a final point, really, from our point of view, is that we're really encouraging outdoor learning and getting into the outdoor city across Sheffield this year, and getting schools to use their local green parks and spaces that they have around their school. It's a perfect way of using some of your sports premium funding for some outdoor educational activities, and we really sort of believe that it's a huge benefit to children and young people, especially at the moment when lots of schools are trying to get outdoors as much as they can as well. So yeah, huge thank you to Martin for your time this morning to go through everything, and I'm sure you'll be getting lots of contacts from Sheffield schools wanting to try and set things up in the new year, definitely. Yeah, so thank you, and anybody needs any questions, get in touch with us or directly through Martin through his contact details there. But thank you very much for your time, Martin.
No problem, it's an absolute pleasure. It's really great to talk to brilliant working professionals out there working hard in Sheffield.